Good afternoon and good day, MARCA friends, family. Um, Welcome to our fifth webinar series, the virtual college experience and the virtual search. My name is Luis Portillo. I am the Vice President of External Relations with MARCA, serving on the exec board. And I am so happy to have a wonderful cast with me today to present to you, to put on a show for you. And I will go ahead and let them introduce themselves. If you could introduce yourself and say the territory that you recruit for us, please. And Dayna, go ahead and start.
Hi, my name is Dayna Hassell. I am the New Jersey representative for the University of Pittsburgh Office of Admissions.
Hey everyone, I'm Jill Schimek. I'm Senior Assistant Director of Admissions for Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. And I recruit in Virginia, DC, Maryland, Delaware, the Philadelphia suburbs that are in Philly and Philadelphia, as well as Massachusetts.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Drewry. I am an Associate Director of Admissions at the beautiful College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina. However, I am regional and live in Richmond, Virginia, and work with all students from Virginia, Maryland, DC, and West Virginia.
Hi, everyone. Adam Moore, Assistant Director of Admissions and Regional Recruiter for the University of Mary Washington in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm based out of the Baltimore area. My travel territory is predominantly pretty much everywhere out of state for UMW. That's not Virginia, as well as our international recruiter. So if it's not Virginia or Florida, I'm your guy.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us worldwide, Mr. Moore. The first question that we definitely have to ask, throughout this pandemic, the virtual college experience has drastically changed, right? What's one thing that you have all seen as a benefit for your institutions and higher education in general through the virtual world?
I think I'll go with that, since I mentioned, my wide spanning territory. Generally in a normal year or a normal fall, I'd only be going to Maryland, Delaware, DC, Pennsylvania areas. But this fall and spring, I've been able to go to Louisiana, Texas, California, do a lot of international fairs as well. So from a UMW perspective, we've kind of spanned our territories and had a lot of opportunities for outreach in areas we wouldn't have normally gone to in a traditional year.
I think Jill, you want to go?
Go ahead, Rebecca. I'll piggyback off of you.
The worst part of Zoom, right? I think one of the biggest benefits from not only just the College of Charleston side, but higher education in general is the now extent of different programs and reachability that we do have with students now. When I applied to college, even only 10, 11 years ago, it was going to the campus, and that's about it. Now students can log on and do a virtual tour. They can meet with us virtually. We have YouTube videos galore that have been recorded on different subjects, different topics, you name it. These students and especially counselors too have access to a lot of varying different things when it comes to higher education and helping our students find their next home.
I think it's also opened up tours, even they're virtual tours, but it's opened up the door to students who couldn't get to our campuses before, whether that was because they couldn't afford to travel to our campuses or because they're a three-sport athlete and didn't have time to get to us. There are ways that they can visit us. There are ways they can interact with us and ask questions that are more widely known and available than they were pre-COVID.
I guess I'm going to, in addition to everything that everyone else has already said, the level of efficiency that it's offered both inside and outside in terms of, of productivity, and my staff is probably going to agree with this, but the places that we couldn't get to before, with over 500 schools in just New Jersey alone, and for those of you who do multiple states, I just do New Jersey. So, not being able to get to every single corner, but from a productivity side, for our HR divisions, there's no such thing as a sick day now. So you can actually, come downstairs, flip on the camera where you might not have been able to go. And snow days, I hear, are now obsolete. So just making us more available to them, both from an operations side, as well as for the schools. I think that they can get a lot more of us in to visit than they could before. And it's not as disruptive to their day.
Yeah, I hear that, Dayna. I did read somewhere that some school districts are now making snow days virtual days. So if it's too much snow on the ground, students now have to be virtual learning. And as much as, as much as we have, it's changed since we've all gone to college. That's one thing I'm not going to miss. Another question, about 15 months ago when the world stopped, what did you see as the biggest struggle then compared to what you're seeing now with virtual college search and how students should, I guess, navigate this?
I think that we're entering this time of complacency where a year ago we were pushing out all of this new virtual content for students and they were eating it up. And I didn't they were going to events that we were hosting and exploring our website and exploring our YouTube. And I feel like that's leveled off a little bit, that we're still going to be relying on virtual information sessions for a while because we still only have 10 person tours outdoors only. It's going to be a long time before we can host 100 people in a room again. And so I think everyone's getting tired of virtual information sessions, but actually our virtual information sessions are better than ever because we've had a year to perfect them. And so utilize them. That way, when you do go to campus, you don't have to sit in our conference room for an hour listening to us. You've already done that and you can go explore more of campus on your own. So I think that encouraging students to keep engaging in our virtual content is really important.
Yeah, I think kind of like Jill said, they were gobbling it up and eating it all up. And now I think a lot of students are full, right? They're ready to get off the Zoom. But I think it's a really good time to kind of piggyback what Jill said, to utilize the opportunities that they now have to come to campus potentially, and maybe gets a lot of those questions that they may wait to have prior to COVID, waited to get answered. Now they can get all of those kind of things out of the way before getting to campus and really streamline the questions that they need to get answered when they're there, and maybe talk to professors when they're on campus or coaches, faculty a little bit better now and be more prepared now. I think they can be before getting to campus.
I think one of the things for us is that we've been more collaborative with each other inside. I think our production areas have had a chance to really show what they know how to do. Certainly our marketing communications area within our admissions office has really stepped up to the plate and given us a lot of fantastic materials to work with. So we can change everything. It's current. When it was winter, we were showing you winter tours. I mean, we were able to stay right with the student as far as what they wanted and needed to see when they wanted it. And all of our entry schools were able to really get involved and talk to students and parents in a way that they kind of relied on the admissions office to do. Now they can, join in on the party themselves.
This is kind of going in a little bit of a different direction, I think, but a struggle last year was actually getting students to enroll in our institutions. And this year, I know multiple, and this might be another topic that Louise brings up later, but something that hasn't been so much of a struggle this year, which is good, is for a lot of institutions meeting our goals. And I definitely think that some of those virtual events and things that we have done have really helped play into that. But also getting those students out of their houses and out of their communities that they've known, and getting excited again for college, and especially as we kind of come into our normal world again.
Awesome. Thank you for those responses. When looking at, obviously we have high school counselors that tune into this. Sometimes some students find it as well, but other regionals or potential regionals might find this as well. As we've, the unspoken rule was regionals, we rolled with the punches, right? Because we've been working from home forever. What advice would you give to a brand new regional or a potential new regional to our area, or even regionals in general, about the virtual experience?
I still need some of that advice too, because I just became regional during the pandemic. So I'm going to listen to y'all on that one.
I think, so this was my 5th year being regional. And I think always as regionals, we've had to be flexible, right? Like we have a lot of people who are stakeholders in our work, right? And so I think going forward, like this fall, I'm trying not to make guesses about what my fall is going to be like, but to know that I may have to pivot in August or even September about what my work is going to look like, and being more flexible with what my role in the office looks like, because it looks different now than it did a year and a half ago. And I like, not jokingly, have said to people in my office, I feel more connected and more valued by our office during COVID, and feel more connected to people now during COVID than I did before. I think before the pandemic, people in who are working traditional admissions roles didn't think about regionals a whole lot. MARCA was my primary connection to the field, and not to my office, but to the field and what was going on. And now that's pivoted. I have a closer relationship with my non-regional colleagues, and I'm getting more tasks assigned to me. I'm on more committees in my office than I ever was before, because they're like, oh, we're all on Zoom. We can include regionals in our work now. So I think that's an interesting thing that's happened over the past year, is that hopefully I'm not the only one, but that we are experiencing more connection with our campus partners who aren't on campus than we did before.
And I think I'll piggyback off of that a little bit too. Make sure you keep that connection when things get hopefully back to normal in the immediate future, right? Maybe some of those committees you might not be able to go on if they go in person or whatnot, but I think Zoom is here to stay, right? And in some capacity. So I think that's one thing I struggled with early on in my regional life, was that connection Jill was talking about. I didn't feel as connected to the office as I was hoping to. Going from my previous institution, I was in person and doing the day-to-day in the office. So making sure you keep that connection with your office and your supervisors, and having those connections with campus, because a part of the job is selling the school, right? So, and you want to have that connection to get a better idea of who your institution is on a daily basis. So those connections are super important.
I absolutely agree with both Jill and Adam. One of the things that we did, we actually constructed a virtual social committee, and I jumped all over that. And some of the things that we started doing were to keep the staff connected, having virtual social happy hour, right before, the close of the day on Friday. And we have a coffee clutch or coffee talk at 8:15 to 8:30 on Wednesdays, and we get together. People that I never talked to from the other side of the house that I didn't even know existed. I got a chance to really meet the other side, other than a roster of names. And so, especially if you have a larger staff like we do, it's really important to know not only who these people are, but you get to see a face. And so those connections will definitely stay beyond whatever realm of normalcy we resume.
Rebecca, you had mentioned you started your regional position in the middle of a pandemic. What would you, if you could go back and tell your new regional self what you've learned to this day, what would you say to them?
That it's okay to be alone 24/7, especially when you live alone and then there is a pandemic going on, that it's okay and that it's going to end. And that I think that we sometimes as regionals are underappreciated because of the fact that we're not on our campuses. But with that, we can be so much more appreciated because we can get out and meet our students in our areas and be socially distanced and provide that extra touch of customer service and everything that our campus partners can't necessarily do right now. But I think to answer your question in a short form is that it's okay to be alone.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
I think just piggybacking off of what Rebecca said about like being like our value, I think we're going to show our value this fall again, because while our on-campus colleagues are going to have a lot on them as they are transitioning back into the office, travel will be harder to schedule, right? They'll have on-campus things that they need to be doing. Whereas if a school like at the last minute changes their policy, we're going to, again, have that flexibility to go out and be there. And so I think especially locally, that's going to be really helpful for our schools.
And to piggyback off that, just some data points on that. At the College of Charleston, our top 5 schools, or top 5 states that are represented this incoming fall, 4 of them are where we have 2 of our regionals. And I think that shares a lot. And patting myself on the back. And Patrick, he's a member of MARCA too. So I think it says a lot about our worth and our value of being regional.
Yeah, I concur with you, Rebecca. Seeing numbers from where our regionals are located, it looked like it's a seamless transition for us on overall. One question that came in through the counselor survey that we sent out was, what are your views on virtual visits and how they can expand even more? And what advice would you give to that student about, visiting 6 schools in a day, technically, and how to navigate that process, I would say?
One of the things that we probably stress with students is to be organized and prepare up front, whether you're doing, a traditional type of visit. For those that are techie, this is, right up their alley. Get your spreadsheet together, have your schools, but have your list of, wants, don't wants, deal breakers, all of that, because there's so many of us out there. There's not just one school for everyone. There's a multiple, level of schools. And so knowing what you want, and more importantly, what you don't want, is really important. So when you're going on that virtual visit, don't be afraid to speak up and ask about the things that you're looking for. If you want to know, how many fountains do you have on the campus? Ask about that, because that's something that we probably don't get asked, and we take that information and roll it into the next virtual experience because somebody asked about it. Somebody else may want to know, but to be organized, set up a separate email just for your correspondence with schools, because you're not going to see if it's going to your personal email, and you're going to be getting a lot of stuff. So you do want to keep it separate, but knowing what you want, what you don't want, and staying organized is probably our biggest tip to them.
I think on that too is being engaged in these virtual visits. Of course, it was new for everyone this past fall, but I think being engaged with the admissions counselors, with the professors or students that you're meeting on these virtual visits is very important. It also gives us a sense of normalcy. We are all people and love talking and connecting with our students. And so even if it's a simple, kind of like Dayna said, how many fountains are on your campus? That is a lot better than presenting to a blank screen. And it sometimes helps us remember who you are, which we come across thousands of different students. And so it's sometimes those little things that can really help in the process. But I definitely think engage in those virtual visits is going to be really, really important.
And I think like a really simple way to do that, but I know that not every student can, but if they can turn on their cameras, I think that helps us actually feel like we're not just presenting to a black screen, but it helps students connect and stay engaged too. And I know that some visits are happening in webinar formats, but if students are able to, I'd just really like to encourage counselors to encourage students to have cameras on. I know it's helpful for me. I went through a phase in the pandemic where like every meeting I'd turn the camera off immediately. And I realized like, actually, this isn't helpful to me in staying engaged. So encourage students to do the same thing.
And I think this is a good time too for maybe students who maybe aren't at the point of finalizing those lists of schools, but maybe a sophomore. So to ease into the college search process a little bit with the great videos that all of our schools have and the updates that have been put out, I think the opportunities to start a little bit earlier, maybe just ease into the process would be really good. And I think there's a lot of anxiety with students right now, and kind of having conversations in this setting, maybe, I know maybe I'm scarier than I think, but maybe a little less intimidating, right? Than in person right away. So kind of easing into the process a little bit in this setting is something that should be utilized.
Yeah, and one thing, as a moderator, I'll just give a quick opinion and word of advice. Students, counselors, make sure you tell your students not to judge a school based off of their virtual content either. It's unfortunate that this pandemic has really taken a toll on some institutions and their budgetary restrictions and whatnot. And I think back to, the first virtual tour we put out for Delaware compared to the virtual tour that we put out now, and how drastically different it's become better, right? Like Rebecca said earlier, we were all doing this at the same time. And I remember our events team frantically sending out emails pretty much 3-4 times a day, asking for things that we get asked on the road to make sure they implement into the virtual tour, which made the virtual tour like 2 hours when the in-person tour is only an hour. So they had to figure out there's a lot. Don't judge a school based off of the virtual content. Understand that maybe some budgetary issues have come into play when putting those together, and just take it as, like Adam said, a way to ease into the school. It doesn't have to be the selling point for the school either. Speaking about, this is an awesome transition. I didn't even plan this one. Where we started and where we are today, what are some cool things that you feel your university have put together over the last 15 months that make that virtual experience a little bit more pizzazz, right? So.
We did a virtual prom last year for students, which was a lot of fun. And we did virtual prom, virtual trivia, especially for our incoming students. But we have done so many more information sessions, chats with our deans, and a lot of different things that we never did before. But virtual prom was by far one of my favorites. I even dressed up and joined.
We have our commencement ceremony very early. In fact, I think we're one of the earliest in the country. So last year, I think we were one of the first to actually do a virtual commencement, and the presentation was really spectacular. I felt as an alum, how we were able to so quickly and so thoroughly reach the students and give them some sense of closure and not have them totally be denied that experience when there were so many things that so many people had to miss out on last year.
I think as an admissions office, this isn't, it's not super flashy, but I think what I love that's been able to happen this year is that we've been able to be much more collaborative with our campus partners. And so with our open house events that were open Zoom events this fall, we had all of our cultural centers represented every time we did an open house, which we couldn't have gotten all of those people together on campus physically, but we could virtually. And in addition to cultural centers, like support centers and academic departments that normally we wouldn't be able to have representation from every unit like we could virtually. And so I think that was hopefully super helpful. I learned a lot in our open houses, and hopefully families did too.
Yeah, UMW had a lot of opportunities for virtual mock classes. I sat in on 10 or 15 of those over the last year, which has been awesome to kind of learn a little bit more about the departments. Like Jill said, I learned a lot about UMW over the last year from an academic sense too. From a fun side, we did we have some service dogs on campus, and we had a GoPro on one of our service dogs and did one of our like a 40-second tour of jog of campus, which was kind of fun. So, but yeah, just kind of really trying to see what the students' interests are, and being able to, in this setting, rapidly kind of pivot to what our prospective students were being interested in is something that this setting has allowed us to do.
Yeah, I would say cool thing that I saw happen on multiple campuses, talking to our colleagues in MARCA, is how the tour shifted, right? And how originally it was a slide of a building, and then the student would talk about that building and that academic building or dorm, and talk about the area around it. What Delaware recently did is we went fully live with like one of those GoPro cameras that, the body moves, but the camera stays still, and it's like an actual walking tour, which I found really interesting. And I heard of another school where the students are walking around with their own phones on a Zoom, and one student is a student tour guide and the other one is using the phone, and they switch, and then they have to remember to, mute themselves on the mic, which is pretty interesting. I think the adaptation from that alone is shown innovation in the virtual search for a lot of us, right? Two more questions, and this next one is for the high school side. If, and most likely we will be continuing in a virtual sense somewhat for the fall, what are you hoping the high school side can help you in making that virtual fall seamless, right? As opposed to last year, I think I'll be the first one to admit I felt overwhelmed by the amount of, I guess, visits that I was doing and really never leaving the house. So what are you hoping that we can collaborate with the high school side for the fall?
I think you bring up a great point right there in regards to how many virtual visits that we did in the fall. I did more virtual visits than I did in-person visits. With that being said, it's great, but I think one way that high schools can help is maybe getting 2 or 3 schools together. There's been a few schools in Fairfax County who have done this, and it works tremendously. It helps on time and reaching as many people as we can at once. And so if that is at all possible, I know there's multiple of us who would really appreciate it, and in the efficiency side of things, but also just for our sake and not looking at our computer screens all the time either.
Just to piggyback off of that, I did have one of the school districts. They did all the work. All I had to do was provide the Zoom link. They had 6 different schools together, but it was within one school district. And it was really fantastic for me because I was able to reach everyone in that district, and the people who really wanted to be there. Also the timing of it, because people were a little bit more flexible with their time because they really weren't going back and forth. We could have it a little earlier in the evening, not a 7 o'clock, which kind of makes the evening drag on for us, but it was around the early dinner time. So, you know, the parents were able to, you know, maybe shut off from work a little bit, and it was after whatever sporting events. So it really seemed to be an optimal time for everyone as well. And I think it really worked out on both sides.
I think having a publicly available online scheduling tool is really helpful. And if a school is using like rep visits, which I think it is still the one that's being used by majority of schools, leaving clear notes about what we can expect is really helpful, whether or not we can share a link where we can collect student data, all of those things, whatever we need to know about the virtual visits, really helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And kind of next year is going to be a little wonky, right? Because I'm sure, I mean, with all of us going to different places, some of us are going to have the opportunities to go in person in some of our territory, some not. So kind of having an idea and just that collaborative side of things, to have open communication with schools to see what they're comfortable with, what our institutions are comfortable with, and also maybe kind of having the optionality to, if schools are going to be in person, having the option for that virtual visit opportunity for some schools that may not be able to make it because of kind of how the fall folds for them.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with all of you, especially on the visit side. Probably clumping up a few of the schools really worked best, and it allowed a larger reach for us, I would say. But also, and I'll be the first one to say it, I'm a firm believer we're going to be in a hybrid kind of style for the fall. Some schools will let us in. Dayna, I saw the first in-person college fair invite from Jersey come out not too long ago. And so I'm sitting here thinking, scratching and itching to see if, you know, my territory in DC or Virginia is going to do the same thing and follow suit. My last question for y'all is more so for the future, right? Thinking future tense, and what do y'all hope continues from the virtual search or the virtual college tour for that matter, and how you hope it affects higher education in the long run?
I'll go. I hope that it continues to reach just even more students that wouldn't have thought about our schools had it not been for this virtual campus experience. I know that we have been able to reach so many more students who had no idea that College of Charleston was even a possibility. And so I really hope that that continues, and I think that it will. And just really students to continue to utilize these resources. We as higher education professionals and those who work in admissions, we want to admit you to our schools. And so using these resources, ourselves included, I'm really hoping to see that continue and just continue to go further in the higher education world.
To jump right on that, the accessibility, I think it just even the playing field for everyone. And so for, you know, schools like us, it gave us a challenge to keep ourselves reinvented. How do we keep ourselves new? Because now we have a whole new level of, you know, competition, so to speak. It's not just one fit for one student. And so it keeps us all, you know, energized and relevant on a whole new different level.
I guess going off of that, I think going forward, it just shows the importance to keep the virtual opportunities to continue, right? So I think a lot of institutions maybe didn't have the best virtual opportunities before this, and it shows now the importance that we're reaching students that we might not have reached prior, to continue on with that and add in all of the awesome opportunities all of our campuses have for in-person experiences, but the importance to continue that virtual setting where we might not reach students that we have in the past.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you're saying. I think that hopefully for students to not feel so tied to like only getting answers from and one admissions person, right? Like, yeah, I work with students in the Mid-Atlantic, but there are people on my campus who can answer those questions for students too, and who can do presentations virtually. They are not covering 6 states, right? And so like having more evening opportunity, I hope that we can have more evening opportunities after school that are open to everyone around the world, and that students can really have both options for connecting with us.
Awesome. Thank you all so much to our subscribers, to our, somehow stumbled upon our webinar series. We thank you all so much for being patient with us as well. I know I was speaking to my colleagues here that when we originally scheduled this webinar series and expected to put this out last week on Friday, right before May 1, May 3rd, or whatever you want to call it, was ambitious, and it humbled us, and thankful to my panelists here that were able to join me this week in putting this together for you all. Thank you all. Dayna, Jill, Rebecca, Adam, thank you so much. To our subscribers again, thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Wonderful, wonderful rest of the week. Remember, you can find us all at midatlanticregional.org. Shameless plug, obviously we're hosting it. And then for my high school side counselors, always a reminder, we're here to help you. We're here to assist you in any which way possible, whether it be through a virtual series or hopefully sooner than later in person. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us at midatlanticregional.org as well. You can find our contact information for the general email there. Have a wonderful rest of the week, y'all, and enjoy. Thank you.